Welcome back to another episode of the Rankable podcast. My name's Garrett Sussman. I am the demand generation manager here at iPullRank, and I am stoked. This dude joined us at iPullRank last year. He's been so much fun to talk to, whether it's in like Slack communities, talking about his experience on his farm with his ducks or, anything that's going on in his world. Today, I'm joined by Michael Glavac. He is the senior SEO analyst at iPullRank. He's been in SEO for about 6 years now after spending all these years in construction and retail before going back to school. He's in this class. The market research teacher introduced the idea of SEO, and the dude was hooked. Thank you for joining me today, Michael. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Excited to be on here.
Dude, so before we even dive in, what's it been like at iPullRank over the past year or so? What do you want to get out to folks about it?
I mean, for me, it's that next big step. And just what, the idea of what enterprise SEO could be and the work that could be done. For me, it's been awesome. I mean, just everyone, it's been super collaborative. Everyone works well together and just been, I've been just taking huge strides forward, personally, which has been amazing.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is like when you work at an agency, especially an SEO agency or any type of marketing agency, it's this opportunity to really develop your skill set. And it kind of leads right into what we're talking about today, because, earlier, you and I were talking about this idea of, the T-shaped marketer, the idea that there are all these generalists out there, but how important it is to really specialize in one aspect of marketing. And so we kind of were saying that the same is the truth for SEO these days. Like there's a variety of skill sets for SEO. Do you believe that there should be more like T-shaped SEOs?
I think so, just because, there's let's be honest, there's really two main practices in SEO. There's content and technical are the two main ones. And I know plenty of people that hate content and plenty of people that hate technical. And I don't really hate doing content, but it's not my forte, if I'm being honest. And that could just be from the experiences I've had where I don't want to say it was easy because it's never easy, but there comes points where it's like where I figured out with the content I was doing, where it's like I just keep following the same formula. Like this isn't fun. Just like, oh, I got to write another article. It's like, all right, well, let me pull A, B, C, D, E, F, G have been covered. Boom, there you go. Oh, look at that. It's got traffic. Cool. I'll give myself another gold star, I guess. But, but then there's people that love that, and that's great. And to your point about the generalists, I feel like, when I went back to school, that seemed to be pushed real hard. You should know everything. You should try and know a little bit of everything and just be a generalist, because generalists are more important than a specialist. And I don't think so. Things change. I think especially things change way too fast now, I think, to be a generalist and be good at it. As we discussed, with generative AI and that, like the way that's just went from nobody knew what it was to ChatGPT came out to like what's next, and then OpenAI is like, oh, by the way, here's the ChatGPT API. Go crazy, everyone.
I know it's so hard not to have that conversation about ChatGPT, because to your point, or like just AI generative content, the last few weeks, few months, that's on the tip of everybody's tongue. I think I'm very curious for you. You're differentiating between the content SEO and the technical SEO. What drew you to technical SEO, and what are some of the skill sets that are really important to kind of develop deep in that practice?
Yeah, originally for me, I enjoyed I started messing around building websites with like basic HTML, and I have like my first website that it's straight HTML. It's built using frames, and it's the worst way to build a website for SEO now, but it's still out there because it's like I like going back to it and seeing like, hey, this is what I thought was good once upon a time. But to your point about the teacher, was like I went back to school to do sales and had to take a market research class. And then he talked about SEO one day, and I stayed after class and talked to him for an hour about it. And that was where it's like, oh, I like building websites, but there's also a thing where, hey, is that website built correctly? I didn't know that was a thing. Never thought of that. Like, hey, are my links going to the right place? And, is this? And the deeper and the more I've gotten in, it's like, oh, what's my page speed? Is my JavaScript rendering correctly? And it's kind of starting from there. Yeah, and I think, that base for me was like learning HTML and building sites.
That's, it's funny. I hear that so often, is that sure, there are all these great resources out there to learn SEO, but the way people tend to learn the best is by doing it themselves. Were you experimenting with your own sites with like kind of goals in mind, or were you winging it? Like how did you kind of learn from building your own stuff?
I can't lie. It was a lot of winging it. Just put it together and be like, all right, let me see how Google Analytics works. So where do I install this? And then I remember I put Google Analytics on my site, posted it on my Facebook, and just put, hey, everyone, go visit my site so I can see what Google Analytics does.
Did your mom and some random friend show up?
No, there were a bunch of people showed up. It got like 100 people actually went to it.
Damn.
Yeah. And it was one of those like, oh, cool. So that's what live data. It was one of those like, oh, that's what live data looks like. Cool. No one's been back to it since, but.
But so you mentioned HTML. That's a real critical skill set when you're getting like started. What else do you need to scaffold that skill set so you can come into like an agency like iPullRank and be able to accomplish what needs to be done for like an enterprise client?
Yeah, I think for there, I'll be adamant that I don't know everything.
Right.
I don't think anyone does, but it's outside of that, like HTML, it's like, because you're going to come in and client A is going to be on WordPress and client B is going to be on Shopify and client D is going to be on, Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And you'd be like, I haven't seen half of these, but kind of like at the end of the day with like that HTML knowledge and understanding how a site's put together, you could still kind of take peeks into, hey, is this thing pieced together correctly? Or how to find, if you understand like the structure of a site, like, head, body, what's supposed to be where, or how like certain bits of code are made within the HTML, it's like, hey, I can go find canonical tags in the site. I can go find, hey, are you blocking your page with your robots metadata? Do you have a no index, no follow in there? You can kind of find those things. To be fair, yeah, there's tools you can use now to do that, but still having that knowledge, you can have a tool that tells you, hey, this thing's broken, but without the knowledge of how it was made and why it's broken, you can't. Tool's kind of useless at that point.
I mean, that's a good point. Like if you had to decide between learning tools, learning development, and understanding how to analyze data, what do you think's the most important as an SEO?
Ooh. I mean, right now, I would say being able to analyze the data, but they're so like, I almost say it's like 1A, 1B, 1C. Like,
fair.
If you're going to pick one over the other, I mean, I think too, like you have to have, especially on the technical side, it's very dry. Like it's not exciting reading. It's not exciting being like, oh yeah, let me go read this code stuff. Like nobody writes stuff about code and like exciting. You're not reading Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings code.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to get through sometimes, but like you almost have to sometimes, but
Yeah. So when you are like looking at code, to your point, it's dry, but you love technical SEO. What do you like about it? Like, what gets you going?
On the technical side, for me, it's always different. Like it's not, you know, it's trying to solve, for me, it's trying to solve that puzzle of, because it's like, hey, I have this issue. What is it? All right, let me lift the hood and start looking. And it's a lot of tinkering, and let me see if I can find the piece that's, broken or what's wrong. And it's almost never the same. It's almost like you're building just this bank of examples you can go back to and you kind of add to, and it's like all turns into almost like, for me, I consider it a crazy story. I'm sure if I tell it to someone not in SEO, they're like, whatever, dude. But still, for me, because it's, an example, recently looking at a client's site, and it's like, hey, I've told other people, I was like, I've only read about injection attacks before. Like never seen them, but like the last year between here and my previous agency, like I've seen 5 now.
Wow.
And each one turned out to be like a different thing. And because it's just like, oh, it's the tool's bad. But to like, being able to read the code, it was the last one I saw that was coming from a page. And I went on the page, and I'm like, how are they doing this? And on the one page, there was a line of code in their template that allowed the use of creating URLs. And I'm just like, wow. Like, and if you didn't know how to read through like the page templates and the HTML, you wouldn't have never figured, you wouldn't be able to find that, because how would you know to look through it or what to find? And it's just little things like that where it's like, oh my God, there it is. Like almost digging for treasure, if you will.
Yeah, you really do have to be like a forensic detective to some extent. And the injection is so powerful, whether it's like used maliciously or even, I think something came up recently where Microsoft was injecting into the Chrome browser their own advertisements. So it's like there's a moral aspect too of how you're using the injection tech, like whether it's intentional or you're a victim of it.
Yeah, I feel like you go into GSC and look at these weird URLs that start popping up. And you're like, I'm assuming you guys aren't trying to advertise a page selling certain pills for people.
That is not a fun conversation I can imagine I have with a client. Speaking of which, you've worked in a bunch of different industries and you've seen a bunch of different, technical situations. What would you say is the hardest industry to work in as a tech SEO?
I don't know that one of them would be harder than the other. I feel like for me and this would be everyone, the hard part comes the bigger the company gets. I think irrespective of the industry, because the bigger they get, and this is something too with coming to iPullRank, that I've never had this question posed to me if someone said, what's our ROI on this change going to be? And it's one of those things where you're like, I've never had to explain that to somebody before. Like, that's a great question. I should, like, something you should be thinking about. Yeah, is this worth it? Because in my mind, I'm like, hey, this is broken. We should fix it. And I don't know. I got like, and it's kind of like, as you progress through, you start making those changes to your approach on stuff. But yeah, I don't think from a technical side, I haven't, like I said, I don't think there's one industry worse than the other. I take that back. I'm sorry.
What do you got?
The worst industry is somebody, let me phrase this correctly. The worst industry is, I don't want to say web designers, but people that do development, because you have to tell them they screwed up. And they're like, no, we didn't. Yes, you did. And that was one of my first big jump into some tech SEO findings was a company that built sites using React. That was, we're React experts. All right, cool. And they built their site incorrectly according to Google on how you should do React, because they were serving everything.
Speaking of injections,
right. They just, everything was incorrect about it. And this was like, I spent an entire weekend watching a billion Martin Split videos and then like all the Google documentation. And I had to send them an email that was like, hey, according to Google, you did X, Y, and Z wrong. And that's why your site's not performing.
Oof. I mean, that's the thing. And you brought up the great point, is like working with big sites, working with business culture, and trying, like, how often SEO is either not in the room or B, not the priority, yet the decisions that SEOs make or can impact can for an enterprise can result in millions of dollars.
Yeah, I have been told on calls before, we just need you to SEO the site. But no, it's not that simple. Or having a client like, oh, hey, by the way, we're doing a migration. Oh, cool. When are you starting it? Oh, it's going live tomorrow. Oh, what? And it's like, have you done have you done this list of things? No.
Right.
All right, cool.
Not even on the radar.
They're like, well, we figure we just go live and then you can look at it. What? No, it's not that simple. Like, and I get it when you don't understand. You just, oh, website's a website. Who cares? It's just I'm going to just put it on I'm going to go from WordPress to Shopify. What's the big deal? I mean, well, the big deal is all your URLs are changing. You're going to have all these new Shopify specific templates and stuff. And, I think, you could tie it to it like generative AI stuff. People just don't understand how it functions. If you go from WordPress to Shopify and you're like, well, all I'm changing is URLs, all the content's the same. Right. But Google's going to come through and they're not going to hit WordPress code. They're going to hit Shopify code. And they're like, oh, this is a whole new website. We need to start over. And you see these fluctuations. They're like, I love too. What did you do? I didn't do anything. You didn't.
It's so difficult too, because it's like for replatforming in general, there's all these unpredictable, unintended consequences. So it's like, even when you do it right, there's still no guarantee that you're going to be able to maintain the same level of traffic. Hopefully it goes up, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah. And it's, to your point, like not SEOs not being in the room, but like, well, we didn't need you because this is a dev thing. Yeah, you do, because the dev idea of what to do and my idea of what needs to be done are probably not, they're similar, but different. And I think back to like a class I took on web design, the use of like simple thing, like use of heading tags, H1, H2. As an SEO, your H1, that's your main heading for the page. This is what the page is, and we need to make sure it's good. And someone that just did web design, and to be fair, the teacher I had was great, but he was an older gentleman who he's got to be retired now. I feel like he was close when I took him, but still is like, yeah, H1, that's your biggest heading, and then your H2 is a smaller one, and then you use H3 to make a different one, and it was for styling purposes. It wasn't for, and then you can see that still sometimes where people use their heading tags for styling purposes. Yeah, and it's gotten more advanced to where it's like, hey, you can keep your structure, but you can ID your heading tags and be like, hey, my heading tag, my H2 in the blog can be, you set the styling to be different for the blog and the service and stuff like that. Right. But it's, back to, you can't know everything. And
right,
people are just like, I'm using a template. It's fine.
Exactly. There is so much overlap, especially the bigger the organization, to your point of like, you wouldn't expect an enterprise like an SEO to do a web designer's job. You wouldn't expect them to do a copy job, and the developer shouldn't necessarily expect to do the SEO job, but you should take everyone's opinion into consideration because it ultimately impacts the business.
Yeah, and I like to equate the way I like to, when I would talk with a newer client, or if they're new to SEO, explaining it to them is the best way to look at. Everyone's like, oh, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah, but I think that cliche is a little not 100% accurate with SEO. The way I started explaining it to people is like, imagine your competitor who, you're in a race to get down to 150 pounds for your fight. Your competitor's at 152 and you're at 165.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to think of, now take away like, the diet science behind it, where, well, maybe that person, no.
Right. That's not the point.
Right. They have a lot less distance to 150 than we do. But here's the thing, we need to do X, Y, and Z. So equate it to your diet. You need to do X, Y, and Z to get down to 150. That's going to take time, because you're not going to just get down to 150 in a week or a day. It's going to take months. But also, if you stop, they're not like, did they stop?
Right.
They may not have. And that's where, I've been reading a lot too now, where people are like, well, we're going to cut SEO because it's not like, oh, paid. Okay. It costs $5 for a click. Somebody clicked, we paid $5 and they bought the thing.
No. It's like during the pandemic that happened a lot, and then people paid the consequences. Now we're going through a recession and people are not learning the same old, and competitors, to your point, keep going and keep gaining ground or making the gap bigger.
And it's funny with like the recession talk, I was really thinking too, I told a lot of people in like 2021 and part of last year, I was like, I don't look at 2020 data because that's a weird year. No, 2020 data, that's what I want to look at right now. Who screwed up? Because everyone's going to screw up again, like, oh, it's going down again. We need to shut it off. And the one client I worked with at my previous agency, that was like the first one they gave me, they did kind of turn it off during the pandemic, but they did a lot of work going into it. And they're like, because they did third-party logistics. So,
okay,
their business kind of boomed anyways, because everyone started buying stuff to the house.
Right. It's the nature of the industry is like they were benefactors, beneficiaries. There's the word.
But still, like, they're like, hey, we need to go hard again. You're like, well, let's go. But they, saw great increases through because they did that initial work.
Yeah.
Leading into it, it's like one of those things where you can make the case, be like, yeah, what if you kept going? And I think that's having good use cases too, with your, like, hey, here's somebody that when times got tough, didn't shut it off. And then when it got good again, it got great.
Exactly. It's compounding too.
Yeah.
So gosh, it's fun because it's like, we have these conversations. There's so much more that you and I could talk about. We didn't even get to like local SEO or any of the other cool things that you've done, but I wanted to flip it over and go to rapid fire rankings, get your answers. Are you ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Turn on the music, get the time on the clock. Here we go. Michael G. Rank your top 3 of something that you love. It could be anything.
Top 3 things I love. I mean, it changes all the time, but with winter, I do love snowmobiling. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I only got a good weekend. I do love trying to do things around my farm, but weather's been rough. And kind of cheesy answer. I love hanging out with my nieces and nephews because they're.
Hells yeah, not cheesy. I feel you there. Okay, rank your best SEO marketing win.
My best win. My best win was suggesting these super short form pages to a client that go against every bit of advice I see people on the internet. Like, no, it's got to be long form. It's got to be 3,000 words, and it's got to be blah, 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 blah. No, it was short form Q&A, like Q&A, or that's Q&A, sorry, FAQ on just simple stuff. and tested a handful of pages. Like, these things are great. We're getting great leads through it. I'm like, thank you.
Back to the business. I love that. Okay, rank your top 3 SEO tools.
Currently, I use Ahrefs a lot. I love GSC, though it's not complete, but I still feel like you get great info out of it. And then Screaming Frog.
Classic. And yeah, the GSC is like, that's the data. That's our closest we can source of truth outside of GA. Rank your best SEO trick or tactic.
I don't have a legitimate trick or tactic. Or I shouldn't say it's not legitimate. That's not correct. But just keep it simple. I think people try and get too exotic sometimes with what they're doing, and they neglect the simple things. And then they're like, what happened? Like, well, your foundation's crumbling. That's why your house is caving in.
It's fundamentals. There are a lot of like new things that happen in SEO, but it really does come down to the fundamentals. Rank what you love most about SEO.
I love like the uniqueness of it. It's different, changing. It's never the same. Sure, there's things that are like, you got your things that stay kind of the same, but it's always evolving, getting different, and it keeps it fresh.
Love it. I agree. That's why I love it too. Rank your best learning SEO resource.
When I started, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching every Moz Whiteboard Friday. More recently, I tend to just follow kind of key influencers in the space, like in LinkedIn, Twitter, because I feel, they don't give away the secret to the sauce that they use, but they do provide great insights still.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear just how they think about things. Okay, so this is probably one of the toughest questions, but rank the top 1 to 3 SEOs or marketers that you most look up to.
I don't really look up to anyone right now. Like direct, like is that they're my, I don't know. They're my idol in SEO. But the first director of SEO I had, she was an amazing mentor and really helped push me in the direction I'm in. But she turned me on to Bill Slawski and Hamlet Batista early on. That's where I feel I learned a lot reading them. Kind of followed I've read and followed from everyone, just trying to absorb as much as I can. But
so many great people. Yeah. It sucks that Bill and Hamlet are not with us anymore, but they have so much great content that they produced over their lives, whether it's SEO by the Sea or all the stuff on RankSense. I think there's even a webinar that Mike and Hamlet did all about automated testing on our site. So definitely really, really smart dudes. Michael, this has been awesome. If someone wants to find you online, pick your brain, or just talk about the farm or just snowboarding, where's the best place to get in touch?
LinkedIn, best spot to get with me there. I'm pretty active on there, so I feel like I drop funny thoughts, and those do way better than anything that I try to be insightful about.
Especially when our industry is just ridiculous. I appreciate what you share on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate taking the time and you sharing your experiences.
Oh, for sure. This was tons of fun.
Awesome. So my name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. This has been the Rankable podcast. We will catch you next week. Catch you later.